Welcome to the Remodeling Reimagined podcast, the podcast that gives you an inside look at the remodeling world from award-winning designers. On this week's pod, Cindy Cipriani sat down with designers Melissa Firth and Ken Endt to discuss how you can incorporate textures into your design. Without further ado, here is your host, Cindy Cipriani.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another podcast of Remodeling Reimagined. I'm here with Melissa and Ken, and we thought we'd switch it up a little bit. Instead of speaking about the business of remodeling, we really want to bring you some inside tips on design. And today we're going to be talking about making your design really pop and look awesome with some interior decorating tips. We're going to be talking today about texture, and there's two types of texture. One is visual and the other is tactile. And why don't we just kick it right off with what's the difference, and maybe Ken can fill us in on that.
Absolutely, thanks Cindy. Yeah, texture is very important to good interior design because it's another type of layer that you're going to use in a space. And as you mentioned, the two types are visual and tactile. So tactile, that sense of touch, means that you're putting in interesting fabrics or using items that have a texture that you just want to experience by touching them, by sitting in them, that you feel good wrapped around you. And then visual texture are certain types of layers that can be architectural. They can be something that is enhanced with lighting. There's many different ways to achieve that visual type of texture as well. So I think we're going to explore both kinds of those.
Yes, and really those two types set the mood in the room, and that's very important. So Melissa, how do these two types of textures really change the mood of the room that you're designing?
Well, even when you just think of a kitchen, everything in a kitchen is hard. Hard surface, floors, countertops, cabinets. You need something to soften it up. So whether it's a backsplash that's still a hard material but has a texture to the design, helps with a visual impact, but then it also smooths out what everything else looks like. And also when you talk about throwing an area rug or dish towels, things to start softening up the space in all different textures. Another great thing is when you are decorating, and whether it is in the kitchen or another space, it's just adding greenery in there as another form of texture that now not everything is hard surfaces. We start adding some softer textures to the area.
Yeah, and we know that even for air quality in a kitchen or any room, adding real live plants is great for cleaning the air. It also makes me happy. Like in my kitchen, I have a hibiscus plant that I have outside all summer long, but in the fall I bring it inside and it blooms all winter in the one window that I have. And what isn't happier, than looking at a beautiful bloom in the middle of a dreary winter. So bringing these things in and actually bringing in color, maybe the person's favorite color, and putting that in some type of texture really works. So do you have any examples of bringing texture into a room, Ken?
Absolutely. Architectural features, textures that are achieved through maybe wainscoting, where you can do a raised panel or use picture frame molding to add dimension to your wall. That's a good example of the visual kind of texture. Wallpapers that mimic grass cloths or other patterns so that they're easier to keep clean. You don't have all of those little surfaces that can attract dust, but there's a lot of amazing wallpapers that have the appearance and give you texture in a room that are a lot more maintenance friendly. Architectural moldings, built up door casings, window casings, and baseboards are another way to add dimension. They give that visual texture to your wall. I love nice built up molding. It adds a lot of dimension to your door spaces. It's a great way to do it.
Yeah, wallpaper, I'm a huge fan of wallpaper. In our Mount Laurel showroom, we have an example of that. On the bottom of the wall, underneath the chair rail, we put a wallpaper that looks like burlap. and it just adds a softness to the room, gives it a warmth, and also adds to the dimension. Do you have any examples of maybe wallpaper or using different colors and dimensions in your projects, Melissa?
Yes, and it's funny, I just thought of something when you said wallpaper. I remember growing up and every room in my house was wallpapered. Borders and all this different stuff. And then all of a sudden, wallpaper seemed to go away and everybody went back to just painting their rooms. But you're really now starting to see some of those textures being brought back into spaces. Whether it's one wall as an accent wall. I recently am working on a project, and actually Ken helped me on this project, is we had a custom bar area built. And rather than doing the typical backsplash or shiplap or something behind it, we found a really cool textured grass cloth that went behind the unit that really ended up pulling the whole space together, including the furniture, the pillows, the area rug. It really was the last step that kind of said, wow, this all goes together. And it's just simple, texture on one wall in the space brought it all together.
Yeah, having those areas that really pop are amazing. Even in a bedroom, if you have just the wall behind the bed, a different color, or perhaps running boards in a checkered pattern and then painting those boards, maybe a gloss, and having the wall flat paint behind it, will add that texture and dimension and give it a really interesting space. Do you have any other things to add about that, Ken?
For wallpaper, pattern is a great opportunity too. So imagine a broad paisley pattern because it repeats and is dense in the way that it fills a space. So that's going to give you a great visual texture, adding that pattern, that repeating element.
Now, we mentioned in the beginning that its texture is both tactile and visual. So getting to the tactile part, how can we add some texture into, let's say, a family room?
I think fabrics are the greatest opportunity to do that. So imagine sitting in your big comfy sofa, but the fabric isn't a cold feel to it, that it's a nice nubby type of cotton or linen blend that when you just rub your hands across it, it just feels really good. Of course, those types of fabrics, because they're a little bit thicker and will often have more of a fabric variation in them, there'll be additional colors. So you're not just looking at a solid piece of furniture, a couch or a sofa, but it's something that you just want to sit and be in because it feels so good on your hands and on your skin. Using pillows that also have that nice textured feel to them. Corduroy is one of those that strikes both the visual and the tactile because you can see all of the ribbing in a corduroy, but there's nothing that feels better on your hands to me than that velvety touch of a corduroy. And then of course you have lots of opportunities to accessorize those elements. They could have fringe on around a pillow. Imagine a rug that has a nice border with fringe and tassels, things of that nature. So they feel great on your feet. You get to experience them that way too.
I can picture laying on the sofa with a big comfy blanket that has some texture to it. Like a nubby, or wool, like knotted, comfy blanket.
Yeah, especially in the wintertime, if you have a room with a fireplace in it, maybe having some soft blankets that you can throw on the side chairs. Even the old beanbag chairs. Do you remember those?
They're come out too.
With they've come
they
out
are.
With like
Yes.
fuzzy ones, right? That you can like just plop in that in front of the fireplace and have a nice warm hot cocoa or something. And also, even with your window treatments are going to add a lot of texture. We know that recently a lot of people have been using white and gray which is really, neutrals, and you can add to that so much. I have a board behind me, if anybody can see it there, that we put here in our showroom just to show a visual of all the different elements that you can bring together as far as adding texture to a kitchen. And I know, Melissa, you put this board together. Do you want to comment on what you put on there?
Yeah, we just started, off a, base kitchen, which was pretty neutral in the white and grays. But how do you bring in some color? And it's the fabrics, the knob on the kitchen cabinets, again, adds a little bit of texture, but it also adds that color. And then you can see like the backsplash. It's still like that hard material, but it pops because it's a different texture than what the cabinets or the countertop are.
Yes, it doesn't have to be boring, right, to have some kind of texture in it. It can also be practical. And no, let me put that backwards. Practicality doesn't have to be boring.
Yes.
Either way, So doing something like this when we're designing really helps the client to picture how all those elements are going to tie together. And even the crown molding that is on here. One thing that we like to do is put crown molding at the top, and then maybe about 5 or 6 inches down, put a small crown molding, and then you paint the whole thing, and it ends up looking like a big, thick, 9-inch crown molding at the top of the room. And it actually elevates the ceilings and it adds that interest. So that also is that visual effect of giving almost a crown around the room. And
it's funny. I sit here and you mention all this stuff, and something that came to mind too is, for people that are listening, all these things that we're talking about are simple things to do in your house. None of them are real costly when you think of adding pillows or plants or area rugs or any of that stuff. Is more of the decorative side of it. And that's what really makes your home, your house, and warm and cozy, is by doing a lot of these different things.
Yeah, and lastly, the lighting, right, is going to play a huge role in how the light hits all these different textures. And maybe, Ken, you could comment on how much lighting is important.
It really is, because you can use lighting to highlight certain features. So if you have a beautiful stacked stone on your fireplace, you're going to increase the interest and dimensionality of it by having a spotlight that washes down on that, and it's going to highlight the colors and create shadows. So there's a lot of texture to be had from accent and spotlighting. Uplighting is another way to do that. So with lamps that are strategically placed can highlight corners of your room, and imagine them being near your window treatments so that it highlights those as well.
Yeah, even with the new LED lighting that can be in different colors. You can put that on the top of your cabinets. You can put it in the toe kick. You can wrap it around the bottom of the island. You can even put it underneath the lip of the island. And that really creates, if you have beautiful side panels on your island, it'll really accentuate the different contours of the cabinets themselves. So lighting is really important, and that's something that we talk to our clients about right in the beginning of the project, is how they literally see things and the mood that they want to set in the room by color, by texture, and also by lighting. So all of these things are great. Do you have any out-of-the-box ideas that maybe you've done on a project that we could share in conclusion, Melissa?
Well, one, and I'll think of that, but the other thing I just thought of is candlelight too. They have all the fake candles now that really help add a little bit of warmth and texture, into a space. But, I think it's finding those elements that are the wallpaper or their textured black backsplash. Cindy, you mentioned white and grays. Everybody's doing white and gray. They think, okay, I have to do a white subway backsplash. You don't. You can change the pattern to a herringbone with a texture tile that really just adds that additional depth to it that, hey, I put a little bit more into this, and it just changes the whole look and feel of the space by just changing the direction of the tile and mixing it with all those warm metals, you know, faucets and hardware and everything that really add that additional depth to it.
Yes. How about you, Ken?
I think one thing that's outside of the box or ideas that people may not have heard is sheen, so reflectiveness. Imagine that you have a nice old vintage keepsake box, or again, a wall that has a slatted wood that you've done with reclaimed pieces. You can leave them natural, or you could apply a polyurethane that has a satin or semi-gloss finish. That's going to enhance the sheen and light reflectiveness and just make it a little bit more eye-popping, because it's going to have a richness to it with a semi-gloss or satin finish. So that's a nice way to take an existing piece and take it up a notch with adding sheen for that type of visual texture.
Great. Well, I hope everyone got a lot of ideas on how to add texture to your project, and make sure that you talk about them right at the beginning. Walk around your house, see the different things that you already like and that maybe you would like to see more in your remodeling project. So thank you for joining us again for Remodeling Reimagined, and stay tuned for our next subject coming up soon.
Once again, thanks for tuning in, everyone. And if you're looking to start a remodeling project, you can learn more about our design process at CiprianiRemodelingSolutions.com, and you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.